Everyone, this is OneManZerg, and I want to talk about the Broodlord today. So the Broodlord is a very high-tech unit that the Zerg army has. It's actually kind of your final tier tech with the Ultralisk. Few things, it's very slow. So if you look down here, it's got a 1.41 movement speed. I think that's the slowest unit in the game. But its strengths are it does 20 damage from 9.5 range, and it attacks every 2.5 seconds. And then what it does is it sends out these broodlings over here, these swarm seeds, and then they again attack. So I've created a little scenario here that we'll go over in a minute, but just a few things. You want to protect your broodlords since they're so slow, so you want to bring troops to come with them, preferably anti-air troops, as they can fight ground units, and then some anti-air troops can fight ground too. So Hydralisks are good, Corruptors are good. Sometimes you can go like Roach Hydra with them or something like that, so that you can fend off air units and some ground units that might get in range. Alright, so with that I want to go over a little attack scenario here. So I have a Terran army down here, and this could be any army. This could be Terran, it could be a Hydralisk army, it could be Stalkers, but Stalker blinks make it more dangerous for Broodlords because they can blink right under the Broodlords. So let's just see, we're going to send this, make it control group 2 and this control group 1. Does that work? Yeah. So we'll just send them to attack each other and see what happens. Now, if you don't micro your Marines, you can see the Marines are going to end up attacking these Broodlings, which is very strong for the Broodlords because the Broodlords won't get damaged as much, and they can take out these Marines who are then going to take out the Broodlings instead of the Broodlords. So by not microing that, you can see that the Broodlings do a very effective job of containing the other army, and then these Thors are even, you know, deciding, what do I attack, the Broodlords or the Broodlings? And if they attack these Broodlings, then the Broodlords clearly win. So we had pretty good success right there with these Broodlords versus that Marine Thor army. And the same thing would happen with Hydralisks or Stalkers or other ground to air troops. So just want you to see that the Broodlings do contain the other army. The AI of the other army shoots the Broodlings when they get within range instead of the Broodlords a lot of the time. So that's very important to know. To get around that, you can use your troops and you can micro them up. So let's see, we just need to respawn this. So we gotta respawn. So here's my second group and here's my first group. And then I'm just creating a little bit of a straight line here. Weird clicks in this thing. So to get around that, we'll make this control 2 and this control 1. So 2 is going to go up and 1's going to go down. Pretty much same scenario. But 2, I'm going to bring them in here, and then I'm going to focus fire down. So you can see this is where your Broodlords are very weak. So instead of the Broodlords winning pretty handily, they're probably going to lose right now. It's just going to take a matter of time for these Thors to finish them off. So instead of finishing with 3 Broodlords and no enemy units left, you finish with, you know, these 2 Thors left, or well, 1 Thor now that the Broodling's done it. So that's a very big turnaround. You've lost 3 extra Broodlords and they've still maintained an army. So that's why you need some support units with Broodlords. So let's respawn this again, and I want to show you another tactic. So if you're attacking into someone's base, you have these ledges on the bases a lot of the times on your maps. So what you want to do with your Broodlords is you want to use that ledge. We saw first that the Broodlords in a straight line with no micro right here would take out this army. But then we saw with a little bit of micro, this army is able to take out the Broodlords when they don't have support. So what you can do is create a positioning advantage. So this army is going to be here, and then we're going to move our Broodlords in, and we're going to attack them, and then army 2 is going to say, oh, I see your Broodlords are attacking me. So I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to attack the Broodlords as best I can. But then these Broodlords can just go back a little and force these troops to get way out of position, so they're going to have to run around whatever ramps left to get to the Broodlords. And so by using this ledge, you effectively eliminate a lot of this army, or cause them to do a lot of micro, or cause them to get out of position. And so you can see this ledge ability of the Broodlords with their spawn Broodlings really puts them in an optimal position to beat an opponent's army. And you can go back and forth on this ledge. The Thors actually had range to hit the Broodlords, but if you hit them from far enough away and there's no Thors like Marines or Stalkers or Hydralisks who have about a 6 range, Hydras with the upgrade they have a 6, then your Broodlords can effectively dance them in and out of cliffs, just like Colossus can dance units in and out of the cliffs with their extended thermal lances. So that is a very good tip, is using those ledges of bases to your Broodlord's advantage. And then you can drop after that, or maybe you can Nidus, or just put some pressure on that outside of the base and contain your opponent. So all of those are very good. Get into some support units now in a second for these armies to see how Broodlords can even be more effective. Here's an example of some bigger, maybe later game army mixes in the picture. You can see they're kind of similar. There's a lot more gas in the Zerg army, so it's a little unfair there, but the unit count of the Terran army is higher, so it's kind of balanced. So this scenario, I have this mixed Terran army ground forces versus this mixed Zerg army with some Broodlords. And I want to show you how important it is to move your Broodlords in first. So let's just have the two armies run at each other. So here's my Zerg army. It's going to attack here, and the Terran army's here. And I'm not going to do any micro other than stim these Marines, because you're going to see that in most late game scenarios. So we can see this Terran army is really chewing up this Zerg army, kills all the units that it has, and then if you stim it again and attack in, if you want to do any micro, you can definitely take out these Broodlords from this point and see that. Here, let's just right click. At this point, it'd be very easy to do any kind of micro with these units, because there's so few of the Zerg left, because the Zerg's just charged in with all of his units at one time. And you can see you might lose this Thor, but if you did any more micro, you definitely wouldn't lose that unit. So pretty impressive victory for the Terran. Even though it was a less gas intense army, he comes out ahead. So let's try that again, but let's move the Broodlords in first to show the effect that having those Broodlings as some cannon fodder will have. And this is obviously usable in any scenario. I just have this in a Terran versus Zerg army right now. And so we're going to make the Broodlords 3, and this army 1 and this army 2. So once again, the Terran army is going to be in a relative ball, because that's the position they want. I'm going to move the Broodlords in first. So they're going to drop some Broodlings on these guys, and then after they start shooting off some Broodlings, now I'm going to move in the Zerg army. And now I'm going to keep this Terran army, stim it up like I did last time. But we can see these Broodlings have softened up this army a little, and the Zerg's going to do a lot better versus him in this scenario than he did in the previous scenario. He actually comes out with all 4 Broodlords left, and there's only 2 Thors left, and all these Marauders will pretty easily go down. And if you want to micro from here, if the Thors firing at one Broodlord and the Broodlords firing them down. So you can see the Zerg actually ends with a Hydra left and all of his Broodlords. So very different outcome from those two battles, and the primary difference was that you sent the Broodlords in first and you let the Broodlings absorb damage. So that's one of the greatest things about the Broodlords, not just their damage, but the sacrificial units that they have. And you can run the scenario a few different times. The last time I actually had like 5 Hydras left. So positioning will do some other advantages. But use those spawn Broodlings, get them in there first to soften up your opponent, and then bring the rest of your army in. I'd even recommend waiting a little bit longer than I might have there. Wait for the Terran to come up towards you and then charge with your units. And that will give you a huge advantage in using your Broodlords. Here's a scenario where you're pushing into a Terran's base and you have a Zerg army and you have some ground forces, and you don't want to go against this. I mean, let's look at this. These unit-wise compositions are pretty equal. The left side actually looks like it's cheaper. The unit count is about the same. Left side does have a lot of base structures though, so that adds to it. But it's you know, similarly sized armies, these two, but you know, if you moved in with this Zerg army against this base just on an attack move, you definitely lose. These siege tanks are in great position. There's bunkered, there's a wall off, all sorts of trouble for you. So how do you break this as a Zerg player? You can bring in Broodlords. That's a great idea to break this. And so you can see if you just move these in, I'm not even going to do it, they would just get slaughtered. They'd get raped by all these ranged units in here. But if you move these Broodlords in, you can soften some things up. So let's see how that goes. And then if I'm the Terran player, I'll get all my ranged units and I'll come over here. And you can see they take that down. But then we learned earlier, I'm just going to use this ledging for advantage for the Broodlords. And you can use that ledging and take out a lot of these Marines. And then the Terran player, he's going to have to bring this back. So when he brings that back, then you take these units in and you attack some of the other things. And you're going to get this back and forth a lot. Now I can repeat that a lot, but you know, I don't really want to. And then these units are going to come out some more. As soon as you see them coming, you back your Broodlords up and then you hit them again. And these tanks, are going to hit their own units. So, gotta get these Zerg units out. So the tanks are going to actually help you kill them. So they'll de-siege the tanks. And once you break through this ledge finally, with your Broodlords, you can actually kill these tanks. And once the tanks are dead, then you can move in. Because a lot of Zergs have problems with these Terran bases, breaking through them. And this is, you know, probably your best method to do it, is to get some Broodlords and siege into it. Other than this, you're obviously going to want to macro, expand, get more bases, get more income, blah, 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 blah. But you can see through this method, the Terran won't be able to do much. If he does get Vikings, which is very likely, then you're going to want to get some Corruptors to counter that. And you're going to do a lot more back and forth. So your Corruptors are going to go back and forth with the Vikings. Your Broodlords are going to go back and forth with the troops and with the Vikings as well. And then, you know what? You take out those last few siege tanks, just target that down. And then you can have your army just come in here and clean up the rest of the space really easily and quickly, as opposed to ledging it with your Broodlord. So you're having trouble getting into a base, be it Terran, be it Protoss, maybe even another Zerg player. Just use these Broodlords and slowly push into their base to dominate their army. Because otherwise, you're definitely going to lose the battle if you just run in there. So I hope that helps you guys. Take it slow. Have some patience when you go in with those armies. Don't just run your troops into those wall-offs or those superior defensive positions. Prod at them and then come out ahead. Here's a scenario of attacking a Protoss player with your Broodlord. So Protoss likely going to have Void Rays and Phoenix in the mix. And you don't want to bring Mutalisks against that, because the Phoenix is going to rip apart your Mutalisk. But you would want to bring Corruptors as support for the Broodlords versus there, as well as Hydralisks. So I have Hydralisks and Corruptors here with my Broodlords. So the Broodlords, I've actually put them on different groups too. I want to tell you guys about that. Broodlords are in one group, and so I'm going to have them attack in, and then I'm going to bring my support troops, which are in a different group, to help support them. And then when the Broodlords hit the base, your opponent, and they're once again 9.5 range, so they have very good range, your opponent's going to bring out his troops to attack. So that's when you want to have your support troops nearby, and then just quickly focus down on those. And so by having your troops focus down on their support troops, you can draw them out of position. And then you might get a little bit of back and forth here, which I'm not going to display, but you'll have some back and forth, so you'll need to kind of juggle in and out. I'm going to take my Broodlords out when their units get close, then I'm going to bring my support troops in, then they're going to run their troops out, then I'm going to push my Broodlords back in on their base, and then you repeat that process where you attack their base, they come out into you, you might retreat a little with your Broodlords while you bring in your support troops to take out their troops, they run back, and so it's just that whole back and forth that you're going to do. But for Protoss, once again, recommend Corruptors and Hydralisks as support units for your Broodlords, because they're not going to get chewed up as easily. And if they do have Colossus, they're not going to pull out their Colossus on your Broodlords because it's not anti-air. And if they do, you just back up your Hydralisks. If they pull out their Colossus to attack your Hydralisks, you back your Hydralisks up, and then your Corruptors can take out their Colossus. So it should counter that pretty effectively. So once again, just use this combination to support your Hydras of Infestor, Hydralisk, and Corruptor. This is a Terran versus Zerg Broodlord push on your opponent's base. And now, you're going to have armies behind this. Terran will probably have some tanks, some Marines, all that good stuff. And your Zerg, you're going to have your army of whatever you have as well. But I'm focusing right now on the Broodlord aspect. So the Broodlords are what's going to go in and try and attack the base, break any kind of Terran line, because Terran lines are the hardest thing to break with the siege tanks, with the turrets, with all their ranged troops. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring your Broodlords in first, then as Vikings come out, which are the hardest thing to deal with because they have a range 9, then you're going to bring your Corruptors in and back your Broodlords off, because you don't want your Corruptors to get hit by the towers, but you do want your Corruptors to attack the Vikings. And that's what makes this matchup so difficult, is that there's a whole bunch of back and forth because you have range 9.5 on range 9 with the Broodlord versus the Viking, and then you're going to have a whole bunch of back and forth. So as you, let's bring our Broodlords in. As you bring your Broodlords into attack here, you're going to have more issues as the Vikings come out to you. And then you're going to bring these in and back your Broodlords off. And then if you can, you get out of range of these turrets, But if you can't, then you have your problem scenario where these Vikings will just back up to within turret range, and then your corruptors are going to get hit again, and then you just have to back out. And when they get low enough Viking numbers, then you can just push in, because your main goal is to kill the Vikings and the turrets so that your army can move forward. So if I were to able to take out all these Vikings, then I could use these Broodlords to push in on the less ranged units that they have, and then you don't have as much fear. It's really the Vikings that you got to take care of. So if you can take care of those Vikings, then you're in a good position. If you can fungal growth them if they come out too far, that's optimal, but still likely you're going to be within tank range. So really try and do a lot of back and forth with your Corruptors and your Broodlords versus their Vikings. That's the pivotal battle. Pull their Vikings out of position, hit them with your Corruptors without your Corruptors being ripped up by the turrets and the Vikings. Here's a Zerg versus Zerg matchup. So I have a little Zerg base, a mini base set up here, and I have Corruptors and Mutalisks for the Zerg. If your Zerg is going to come at you, if your opponent's Zerg is going to come at you with any kind of anti-air, they're probably going to be Mutalisks and Corruptors. Most likely Corruptors, but I just threw in some Mutalisks too because they might have that for some harass purposes. So what you're going to want to use is your protection in this case is just like what you use against Protoss. It's just a mix of Corruptor and Hydralisk. Hydralisks are less gas costly. They only cost 50 gas versus 100 for Mutalisks, so you'll be able to get more of them, especially if you're going with other gas costly units like Broodlords and Corruptors. And they're also very effective because they can attack Corruptors without being attacked, since Corruptors are air-to-air only, and they shred Mutalisks very effectively, as well as have longer range than Mutalisks. So let's play out this attack. I'll get my group 1 of Broodlords and my group 2 of my Protectors, and if you're better you can separate it into even more groups, so you have your Corruptors in one group and your Hydralisks in another, and then your Broodlords in even a third. And then once again, bring your units along with your Broodlords so they're right nearby. And then when these, so I'd want to be like right here. When these units come out, so they're going to come out with all their air units and attack in, then you get your anti-air. And it's going to fire down on them. And then you can pull out your Broodlords, I recommend that. And then bring them right back at it so that they target your own Corruptors or your other units. And then your units, your Broodlords can go back in and start attacking. Also, you don't want to pull back your Broodlords too quickly or too far, because if you start pulling them back really far, the Zerg might then bring out his ground army to attack you. And by attacking you with his ground army and your Broodlords not firing their Broodlings, then you're putting yourself in a bad position where your troops that were protecting your Broodlords will now need protecting of their own instead of having those Broodlings there. So, if you're playing ZVZ and you actually get to this point in the game where you can have Broodlords, which is somewhat shocking, then this is how you want to protect them, with Corruptor Hydralisk, as you do slow pushes on your opponent's bases. Hope those tips work well for you guys. I'm trying to try and put together more of these videos. This unit tester, in case you guys are curious, this is the unit tester that I'm using. It's very cool. You get to create your own units. So show you real quick, like you have a left side and a right side that face off, and then you can pick from any of the races. So very, very neat. I'm going to use this a lot more to make some videos, since it's so much easier to create the right scenario as opposed to looking through hundreds of replays to try and find exactly what you're talking about. Alright guys, thanks again. Stop by theuen.com for more tips, some live casts, and all that good jazz.